Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Ted Bannock, and I am Sarn sure excited to be talking about cards.
I don't know.
Sarn it.
I would have much rather you've been driving in your Ford than your gosh Sarn Ford as opposed to your really good Chevy.
Today we'll be looking at a brand new model that's released, the Sarn Ford of 2023. Its initial release was let's see here, 2020. That sounds too. Oh no, way long ago. The Sarn Ford only comes in green and.
Ted.
Yeah.
Why don't we bring it back to before we get into the card, let's talk a little bit about how everybody could catch up with us here. We are we have a YouTube channel and we have a blog. Matt over at the blog keeps up to date with everything. He's been doing a lot of catch-up work with some of the old shows that we've done from the very beginning. You guys want to see some pretty poor podcasting, check out this episode. Check out those episodes from the very beginning. Woo! It was good stuff, but we've learned a lot in the 5 years that we've done it. So we've been doing this. So and then we have Micah, who's up in Canada doing our Second Breakfast live playthroughs on YouTube for us. So we have a whole bunch of ways that Card Talk is trying to engage the community. So life is going pretty well for us here at Card Talk. But Ted.
Hey.
How's life going for you at the Sarn Ford?
This is Ted Bannock reporting from the Sarn Ford, and all is quiet on the Sarn Ford fronts. There's been a little activity, but that's just things that we watch and monitor coming and going, that is. Let's talk about cards.
Yeah, so what's the card?
If you haven't guessed, which is really hard to do by my really subtle clues, it's Sarn Ford Sentry. Sarn Ford Sentry is from the Lost Realm, which I love that cycle. And we saw a lot of Dunedain cards in that cycle. So with that theme comes the Sarn Ford Sentry, which is a lore ally that costs 3 resources, 2 willpower, 1 attack, 0 defense, 2 hit points. It has the traits Dunedain and Scout. In response, after Sarn Ford Sentry enters play, draw 1 card for each enemy engage with you. Pow. What do you think of that one?
That's phenomenal. It gives the Dunedain archetype some card draw without using some of the standard, normal card draw stuff. This gives card draw to the Dunedain archetype. I don't play Dunedain. I play solo, and Dunedain is arguably one of the more difficult soloable archetypes. But I don't know, Ted. You're more familiar with the Dunedain. So what do you?
Well, it's the Dunedain archetype is about engaging enemies, so it plays right into that. And then lore is generally features drawing cards, so just combined the 2 things into this card,
right?
Which I very much appreciate. It's more than 1 hit point and 2 willpower for 3 is about what I expect, and I play this card in some decks, even without the Dunedain archetype, because it's just like it's a way you generally don't want enemies. The problem is you don't really want enemies hanging around from round to round. And this is one of those cards that it's one of those Dunedain cards that gets you a benefit. So if you're playing the archetype, yeah, you're probably gonna get at least one card, maybe two. There's no limit on it. So
what's that card that allows you to, the hammer stroke allows you to engage every single enemy on the board?
Right. So you could have this crazy round where you hammer stroke, which I think is an encounter. It's an encounter action. So you'd have to like engage all those
actually
enemies.
Have to live through everything. You have to faint everything, right? Like
Thicket of Spears, block all attacks.
Right.
And then play this card and profit. Now, I've seen some Dunedain decks in multiplayer, like at a convention. I've seen players be like, I have 8 enemies. Like, I've seen it. I've seen it happen, and it's fun to watch those decks do that, where they're just engaging enemies through card effects, they're optioning things, they're playing heroes like Halbarad, like Tactics Aragorn, and you see this card come into play. But generally for 3-cost lower allies, it depends, because it's like she's not really good at attacking. The highest stat is questing, which is good to get that 2 willpower, and it's good to get a card or 2, but I don't know. I don't like enemies hanging around, even though the Dunedain are like the coolest archetype. They're like difficult to play.
Right.
So it's tough for me because I'm like, oh man, I don't want enemies hanging around. Yeah. But cards are great.
Does this card get put into a deck that's not a Dunedain deck?
You can. It is a way, because
let's say you're playing against Mumax or something. You don't have like specific tech for Mumax in the deck, like a straight shot or whatever it is. Like Great Hunt. There's a couple of tech cards that you can use for Mumax, but Mumax have to stay around for 3 rounds usually, because you can only put 3 damage on them around.
Yeah, there are some scenarios like that where enemies, they can't be killed right away, or they're particularly strong enemies. You have some unique enemies too that will engage you, and you have to kill them over a series of turns because they have some type of mechanic, like can only take so much damage per round, or they're immune to player card effects until you get past a certain quest stage, but they're engaged with you and attacking you. So I'd say situationally, you could put this strategically, and then you're still getting 2 willpower out of it, and you're getting a card, maybe 2, and if you're getting 2 cards off it plus the ally being 2 willpower, like that's a good bargain for sure.
Right.
But if you're drawing nothing, there's so many other 3 I'd rather get some other ability.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. Like, this isn't just a toolbox, like a standard lore card that you just put out and you're like, I'm going to put a couple of these in the deck, right? Like, you have to have a reason to put this Sarn Sentry in the deck from the beginning. You need to really talk about what's, think about what scenario you're playing, or think about what the deck is going to be doing in that scenario.
Now, if you're playing, we've done a lot of Dunedain cards before, and the one that comes to mind is not Heir of Mardil. I'm blanking on the Dunedain card that reduces the cost of Dunedain.
Valandil? The Heir of Valandil?
Heir of Valandil. It was Heir of something. Heir of Valandil.
Yeah, right?
We're close. It's the leadership attachment that when you exhaust it, you get to reduce a Dunedain ally by the number of enemies engaged with you. That's really where I'd say you capitalize on this card. Because if you got 2 enemies engaged with you, you're going to exhaust that, reduce this cost by 2 to 1, and then draw 2 cards. So, if you got 3, you pay nothing and you get 3 cards, which is awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking up that. I think it's the Heir of Valandil.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Exhaust the
So
Heir of Valandil to reduce the cost of the next Dunedain ally you play this phase for 1. Buy 1 for each enemy engaged with you. So you could get this thing. It's 3 costs. So if you're engaged with 2 enemies, you could pay 1 and get 2 cards.
that's a good deal. Yeah.
That's a good deal, right?
The other thing you can maybe do with this card that I haven't done is it's when the Sarn ability response is an enter play. It's not required to play from your hand. So you could sneak attack her into play.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have the engagement phase, and now you have 2 enemies, maybe 3, because I'm checked with you. You're later in the game. Sneak attack, Sarn and Sentry. Now you just get to draw cards, and then she'll attack for 1.
Right. I'm trying to
or be a chump blocker, throw her away. To painful orc attacks, but you get a bunch of cards out of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to see, like, because you're going to need lore access. So who's your lore hero? Like, I can only think of 3 off the top of my head. There's Barivor, Aragorn, Thurindir, and is there any other Dunedain heroes?
That are lore. I think you nailed it. We might be overlooking one, but a lot of decks run one of those in a Dunedain lineup. But you can also have a Dunedain deck and have one.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
Like, I mean, I get Lore Aragorn is awesome, but if you're playing a Dunedain deck, you're going to play Tactics Aragorn, right? Because you want the reduction, and then you're not playing Lore Aragorn, and then if you're playing Barivor, Dunedain Lore Hero, then that's cool. But then you already have the card draw, so you don't need to play the Sarnford Sentry.
No. You just get more cards.
More card draw, right? Like,
yeah.
I think we've talked about this in the past. Like, at what point do you have too much card draw in a deck? Like, I remember I was playing around, and I was like, I was coming off of one of these episodes where we talk about card draw and all this stuff, and I was like, let me just put card draw in a deck. And then I realized, like, all I was doing is drawing card draw cards and not, like, and then I was like, this is, like,
I wish I could quest or attack or do
yeah. All I'm doing is drawing some stupid cards.
I'd say there's no, like, magic formula, but generally, if you're drawing cards, it doesn't do you, if you draw cards without being able to afford to play them, they don't do you any good. Yes, it gives you variety, like having several cards in your hand, gives you more options, and that's always good. But if you can't play a majority of the cards because you don't have the resources, you have too much card draw.
Yeah.
Or you can also play into the discard mechanic, right? So if you have a lower card like Protector of Lorien, which you discard cards to boost your stats, like willpower, defense.
Right.
You can draw cards to feed those, and that makes complete sense. But it's entirely possible. Some players will fight me on this, and they'll just say, you can never have too much card draw. I'm thinking of one specifically.
Right.
But yeah, some will say never. You can never have too many options, but at some point it can hinder your deck, like you're saying. You're like, well, I'm not actually doing anything other than
so back to my original question: when you're playing Dunedain, who's the lore hero that you're playing with? Like, you don't need to play a Dunedain hero that's lore in a Dunedain deck, right? Like, you could play,
I think,
or like, I don't know, whatever, but.
I think there are plenty that do run Barivor and do run Thurindir, but there's lots of ones. Like people could play Pippin because you're engaging enemies and you want to get even card draw off Lore Pippin.
Right. Yeah.
You playing Lord Denethor just for a strong defender.
Mm-hmm. Lord Denethor is a strong defender.
No, you want someone out of the gate who is you want low
Treebeard.
threat and
Let's get Treebeard on the board.
it, there's a couple.
Yeah.
But outside of the archetype, I generally this card doesn't get too much play just because I think there's other choices for the cost.
Right.
Especially being at 3 costs, you got to run. It's like you got to run 2 lore characters to afford it. But if you have Heir of Mardendil, you can reduce it.
Right.
So then you could probably get by with 1.
That's the Heir of Valendil, not the Heir of Mardil.
Yeah.
Heir of Mardil is ready.
Names of cards are important. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, in this case, normally I wouldn't.
Yeah.
At the beginning of our run, remember, it was always like we were talking about Thranduil, Thurindir, Thaurdir. It was always that.
Thurdir.
Like, yeah, Thurber.
Yeah.
Which is good because they just released the the Angmar Awakens and Thardir's back. So, anyways,
that's right.
Who do you play instead of this guy in a like, who is this guy compared to in a Dunedain deck?
In a Dunedain deck?
Yeah, like, I mean, do you play the Ranger of Cardala? Like
there's a lot. There's a lot of space to compete with it because like Dunedain decks they'll run all kinds of different allies, and a lot of them are. I've seen a lot of Tri-Sphere decks too because of Heir of Mardil, and because you want all these effects from different
Heir of Valendil.
Wow, no, I'm not going to get that right. I just know. That's just
right, and I'm going to keep pointing it out each time you say it.
And you should. I need to open up the correct card on my screen.
There you go.
Heir of Valendil, the Dunedain ally reduction card.
Right.
Yeah, there's all kinds. There's like Son of Arnor, and you can combo this with anything that lets you engage an enemy first, like the other tactics. Dunedain that costs 0.
Right.
The Dunedain Hunter.
There you go. And the Dunedain Pathfinder. There's the Hunter that lets you engage somebody
from the top of the deck. Yeah, the top 5 cards.
Isn't the Pathfinder the one that doesn't let you engage? Does not let you. It's 0 cost, but go find a location.
Pathfinder's a location, yeah. So I won't combo with this one, but there's lots of choices. Right?
I just don't think that this card makes it. I don't know. With such a robust card pool, I think it's hard to say that this card is, a staple in even a Dunedain deck. I don't know. That's my own. The card draw is great.
Yeah,
but I am not sure.
The card draw is great, and it bringing that 2 willpower on the board is great. And like I said, if you get it reduced. If you're playing, like I said, if you're reducing its cost and then you get more cards, like it's like a double positive, right? Like I'm going to reduce this cost by 3 to then draw 3 cards. Like holy crap! And I have 2 extra willpower on the table. Right. So
and the fact that you can do it as a you can hammer stroke and then sneak attack and then and then draw a whole bunch of cards, like that seems pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even have to hammer stroke. I mean, that's just a, whatever.
Yeah, it's like a fun gimmicky thing to do. But
do you know what the Sarn Ford is?
I am going purely off memory.
Okay.
And I've been operating off of that the Sarn Ford it's on the border of the Shire, isn't it?
Yeah. It's on the Brandywine. I think the Brandywine River, right? And it was guarded by and that ford was guarded by the Rangers. And so the fact that this is a Dunedain, guarding the Sarn Ford Sentry, I think it fits really into the whole thing. So I think that I like the theme of this card.
I do too. It's part of it's part of, I think, Halberad's quote where he says, like, I would never hold it against the hobbits, but we've protected their borders for a long time and they don't know.
Right.
And this is just one of those One of those folks, one of them rangers.
And what about the art here?
What's interesting is when I look this up, I actually am staring at the full border, like the full art for
Full
it.
art by Smertui.
Yeah, and the full art
Who
is
did Smertui? We just talked about, in recent episodes. I think that Smertui did some of those, like Halbarad and the Heir of Valandil, and like those strange art. Not strange, but just different sense of art. Anyways, go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, the art on the card I think is great because you can see which, yeah, actually that's the Brandywine on the back. We presume, and it's a ranger in a tree, in front of a tree type situation, which is exactly where I expect my Dunedain to be. So I like it. I think it's great. Battle worn scar on this person.
Right? Is it a boy or a girl?
I am gonna guess. I would say female by the art.
Yeah. I think.
I mean, I don't know how. I didn't ask the Sarn Sentry.
Yeah, I think widely in the community it's considered a she, but I think that this is a very gender fluid card, which is good. I think that you'd have to ask the Sarnford Sentry what its pronouns are in order to, which is good. I mean, I don't know. It looks like it has, without getting too detailed, it looks like it has a bus line, but it may not have a bus line, and then.
Yeah, and
it could be a younger face instead of a female face. Like it's very drawn, gender neutral sort of. Like it could be boy or girl. But I think that the community definitely calls this a she. I would guess.
Generally, yeah. But yeah, I do like the art. I think the card is cool. I have played it. It will go in some future decks as well, where it makes sense for it to go in. Yeah. So I say we put her through the ringer.
Yeah, let's do that. So for anybody who doesn't know or maybe new to the show, we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we ring a card on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the one card to rule them all, or one of the best cards in the game, and a 10 is the card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it was made. So I'll start. This card doesn't really light it up for me many times.
Doesn't do it for you.
Yeah, like when I ring a card, I think of like trying to like get inspired by a deck, or like deck ideas start flowing because I think about the card, or like when I think about Samwise Gamgee, I'm thinking about running him in a million different decks, and just Sarnford Sentry, I'm not like trying to figure out how I can engage a lot of enemies and trying to figure out how I can draw 17 cards, like it's just not a thing that I'm trying to do. So having said that, I think I would have to put this card at an 8 for me. I just don't see a lot of use even outside of its it doesn't. I don't think it gets used too much outside of the Dunedain deck, and I don't know if it's necessarily a requirement inside the Dunedain deck. So, Ted, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna bring it at a 7, even though, like I said, there's no limit on the card draw, which is neat. Because you could just be like, I'm gonna just draw 5 cards. Like you could do some crazy stuff with it. Mm-hmm. But it seems, like this fit in a very specific place. Like a lot of cards in the card pool, they're designed to work within or be more advantageous combined with certain cards than just play them generically. So it's got some really neat combinations, but even with those, it's a little tricky. I think the most I've drawn off this card is 2, but I haven't really tried to do something crazy like that. But it's fun.
Imagine if you have several sneak attacks in your hand. And
if someone
of these, and then like you draw 12 cards, and then you do it again and draw another 12 cards. Like you can get really wild, right?
Yeah, it's cool when there are effects that are not limited like this. So if someone's got some record or something they're really proud of, you post in the comments below. Let us know. Like, oh, I played this and I drew 9 cards one time and then I lost the game because 9 enemies attacked me.
right. But those 9 cards,
but
they help me lose in style.
Got a full hand while doing it.
Yeah.
But no, if you survive and pull it off, that's awesome. But so I'd love to hear that story. If anyone's got some to share, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I would love to hear it too. So, well, I think that our Sarn Sentry is probably on the way to the Sarn pantry. So
it's time to say Fordwell.
Fordwell. Yeah. Okay. Everybody, catch us again next week as we talk about more cards. Have a great day, everybody.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.